Hi there, my name is Michelle Clift and I am a HypnoBirthing practitioner and a birth doula in East Doncaster in Victoria. Welcome to my free session called How to Have an Amazing Birth. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my 5 secrets to a positive birth, but also lots of information about the HypnoBirthing course that I run in East Doncaster. So welcome. I'll tell you a little bit more about myself. So, as I said, my name's Michelle. I am 36 and I'm married to Andy. We live out in Mount Evelyn with our 2 kids, Mason and Marley. So Mason was born in November 2012 and I had a pretty uneventful birth with him, but it did leave me quite traumatised, which I was quite surprised by. I had a pretty rough first year of being a mum with him, so I was diagnosed with postnatal depression and PTSD about 9 months into being Mason's mum. I got help pretty quickly, which was good, but all those nerves came back when I was pregnant again with Marley, and I thought, gosh, I can't go through all of that again, and I found HypnoBirthing. I had a really sensational birth with Marley, and I just remember looking at Andy after she was born and I just felt like a superhero. I felt like the strongest woman in the world and I was so proud of myself. So I learned this program to teach and I've been doing that for since about March 2016. So I'm really passionate about pregnancy and birth and parenting, and I'm very passionate about evidence-based care. So that means that I am a massive birth nerd and I'm constantly looking at research and studies and working out what do the numbers actually tell us about birth. So I love sharing that with my couples. So let's get into the session. A little bit about the start of HypnoBirthing. So this is Marie Mongan here. She goes by the nickname Mickey. So I teach the Mongan Method of HypnoBirthing. And whilst there's lots of look-alike programs out there, I'm pretty proud that I teach the original method. So we've been around for about 30 years and we've got a face-to-face format, which can be a little bit strange, I suppose, in this day and age when so much is online. But to be honest, I love face-to-face. I really love, firstly, that the partners come along, so they've got a really deep level of involvement. I love that it's face-to-face because we use hypnosis, and I need to be able to make sure that everyone is experiencing hypnosis in the best way to get the best outcomes for birth. I really love supporting my couples as well, so having that personal connection in class and then going on to provide support through the rest of the pregnancy, sometimes through the labour itself and then after baby comes. That's a really big part of what I do, and what I really enjoy is building those relationships, which I just don't think you're going to get from an online course. So we are the leading childbirth education program in the world. We're definitely the most widely spread in about 50 countries now. And I love that we're actually in about 8 hospitals here in Australia. So that just means that the hospital staff are actually teaching hypnobirthing to the couples birthing in that hospital. So the couples have the choice of learning the normal hospital classes, or they can learn hypnobirthing, or they can learn both. So I just think that it's showing that hypnobirthing is actually quite mainstream and quite widely accepted as well in the maternity world. So why are you here? I'm guessing a variety of reasons, and that's really normal. I do have a lot of women and partners that are quite scared of birth. So I guess scared of pain, scared of interventions. So, will I tear? Will I need a C-section? Will I be able to handle the pain? And partners who don't know what to do. They know that it's going to be hard, but they don't know how it's actually going to all kind of unfold and what they can do to help their partner through that. I am also seeing quite a number of women who just want techniques, really. So they may not necessarily be scared about birth. There's a lot of women out there that are actually quite excited by the challenge and really just want some tools to be able to use to help manage those really strong sensations during labour. Education is another big reason that people come and learn hypnobirthing. And sometimes that's because they just want to soak up everything they can, just learn as much as possible. And then others might be a little bit disheartened by hospital classes and realise that they're quite focused on hospital policy rather than actually supporting the couple through this amazing journey. Lots of nerves around childbirth as well. So it's by far and away the biggest thing that I hear in that first session when everyone introduces themselves. I'm nervous but excited. So really normal to be nervous about things that you haven't done before, especially something as massive as having a baby. Heard horror stories or maybe had some previous birth trauma. So I'm not sure what it is about a pregnant belly that seems to make every single person want to tell you the most horrific childbirth story they've ever heard or that they've experienced, but it really just leads to so much fear around birth. 1 in 3 women have traumatic births. So I have a lot of those women coming for their second babies to have a more positive experience, maybe to not end up with a C-section this time. And I totally appreciate wanting to avoid your own horror story or your own birth trauma. You might just be curious about what hypnobirthing is and want to learn a little bit more information, and that's totally fine. It is a pretty strange word, so I'll explain a little bit more about that later. And support. I think it's such an exciting time in your life, and often going into the hospital system, it's just the same old for them. It's just their job and they're just used to pregnant women all the time. Whereas I am still really excited about pregnancy and birth, and I can be that person to be excited by your side, as well as providing that really well-rounded support. So not just one-sided, maybe really medicalized view on birth. I can provide that, explain that, but also provide that kind of natural explanation as well. So some benefits of hypnobirthing. Look, there's a big long list up there that, you can have a bit of a scroll through, but basically all those things that we don't want to happen in birth, they're going to be reduced when you do hypnobirthing. These are worldwide stats, so hypnobirthing has the same effect for women throughout the world. But in terms of the couples that do the class here with me, it's around half of the women that decide to do hypnobirthing don't believe that they can have a positive birth. And then by the end of the course, everyone does. So 100% of women believe that they have the ability to have a positive birth. Everyone also finds 100% of the techniques that I teach to be effective and that they've enjoyed learning them. With actual birth outcomes, my C-section rate for my couples that do the course with me is about 15%, which is about half or less than half of the general public, which sits at about 33%. Of that 15%, about a third of that is for breech babies. Another third is probably for prem babies, and with a really small percentage being for emergency C-sections during labour. So very, very uncommon for that to happen with my couples. With the actual birth satisfaction, it's around 95% of my couples have a positive birth experience, which is really amazing. So I'll share a few little stories as we go. So this is from Janet, and Janet was one of the first mums that I ever taught. She was really nervous about birth. She had quite a lot of anxiety, so we had a lot to work through. But she was so amazing. She actually didn't realise she was in labour until the final stage. So that's where I guess your body starts to push. And she rushed off to hospital and had her baby within about 10 minutes of arriving there. So she did really amazing, and she told me about a week later she was ready to do it all again. Hypnobirthing isn't a magic wand. It doesn't guarantee you a particular kind of birth. It doesn't mean that you're going to have a drug-free birth or a pain-free birth or a short birth. Anything can happen. So Megan came back to refresh on her hypnobirthing skills after she used it for her first baby. And she was expecting a pretty straightforward, pretty short second birth, which is generally the norm, but I guess we can never put anything in stone. So she was quite surprised to have a long labour, and she was so proud of herself for not needing any pain relief and to be able to avoid intervention when the hospital wanted to speed things up for her. So she purely used hypnobirthing and was really proud of that. So I'm guessing if you're watching this, you'd like to have an amazing birth. So I'll just share some words that my couples use to describe their births. Empowering, awesome, euphoric, comfortable, sometimes pain-free, calm, gentle, and amazing. So birth can absolutely be transformational. It can be the most amazing event of your life. But for a lot of women, it's actually the most traumatic. So we'll explore a little bit around birth and trauma. So some statistics there. It's 30 to 50% of women are traumatised by birth. 15% of women and 10% of men are diagnosed with postnatal depression. And that's about half, we think, of what's actually happening out there. So the other half are actually undiagnosed and suffering at home. And around 9% of women are diagnosed with post-traumatic stress after their birth. So some pretty scary stats there. So how does it happen? Why are there such huge numbers of women feeling traumatised? A big reason is feeling powerless during labour. So often they don't understand what's happening with their body, what's happening with staff, why things are happening. There's often fear around your baby or yourself dying. And this is often where trauma for partners can come in, because they might believe this to be true as well. If there's medical complications, if there's unplanned or unnecessary intervention, and look, this is really common. It's only around 3 to 10% of women that have no interventions during their birth. And as far as what should be happening, so the World Health Organization says 20 to 25% of births need help. So that's a lot. That's a lot of women that are experiencing intervention when it's actually not necessary. So you can see why there's large numbers of women being traumatised. If you have unsupportive staff or an unsupportive partner, sometimes a really fast birth can be traumatic, and occasionally a C-section can be traumatic as well. These don't always have to be traumatic, but it has been linked to women that do feel that birth trauma. So how does birth trauma affect you? Look, lots of different ways. A few of the main ones are withdrawing from friends and family, so not wanting to see people, not wanting to socialise. Low self-esteem with parenting, and I know I certainly had this. I kind of felt like I'd failed at birthing my baby in the way that I wanted to, and therefore I was failing as a mother as well. So I really had not much confidence in making decisions around my son, and even just small decisions around, what should I dress him in today, and is it time to feed him or not? Having little or no interest in all the normal things that bring joy. So another really common thing, and I think this is finally what really tipped me into knowing that there was something wrong. Because I was quite high functioning. I got dressed every day. I still went out and saw friends, but I wasn't happy. I wasn't sad, which is what I thought postnatal depression was. I thought that you cried all day. I thought that you stayed in bed all day. So it was quite interesting to know that just being flat was a really big sign of depression. Issues bonding with babies. So this is really common when women experience birth trauma. And that's because in those type of births, we don't get the huge rush of hormones that women who have amazing births get. So those women get these huge rushes of euphoria, of love, and it helps them to bond and to fall in love with their baby. So often that happens really quickly. Whereas if you have a traumatic birth and you miss out on those birth hormones, you can often take many days or weeks or sometimes even months to bond with baby. And that happened with me and Mason, so it took about 3 months for us to bond. And I guess I'm very lucky that I didn't have thoughts of death or suicide during my postnatal time, but a lot of women do, and really unfortunate that the leading cause of maternal death, so that's death in the first 12 months of being a mother, is suicide, which to me is just shocking and not okay. Birth trauma can also be quite expensive. So I guess my view on it is spend money now preparing for something that has the potential to be the most incredible thing that you will ever achieve, or spend money later trying to heal from something that was the most traumatic experience of your life. So counselling is expensive, as we know, going to see a psychologist or psychiatrist, and we need to pay to do that. Paying to get your birth notes, couples counselling can be really difficult. I guess there's a time cost there. And now you've got a baby to consider. You're probably going to be on one wage. You've got to work around naps and breastfeeding. That can be really difficult. And then making different choices for your next birth. So I guess looking at spending money the second time round because you want a different experience. So let's not be traumatised by birth. Let's have a really amazing birth instead. So I'm going to be sharing my 5 secrets to a positive birth. And my number 1 secret is around your team. So when I talk about your team, I talk about your partner. So I guess that main support person that's going to be by your side. I talk about your care provider. So generally who's going to be giving your medical care. And then other support people. So do you have a doula, a student midwife? Do you have a friend or family member that's going to be joining your team? I think this is by far and away the biggest thing that people get wrong when they're planning their birth. I wish we went to the GP when we had that positive pregnancy test. We go off, we get our bloods taken, and I wish they said, what kind of birth do you want? What kind of support do you want during your labour? And do you know about the 10 different types of maternity care that are available to you? I just feel like that would change everything, but it doesn't happen. They ask you, do you have private health insurance or not? You answer. They ask where you live and you answer, and they say, all right, well, here's the closest public hospital or the closest private hospital. And off you go. You start having your appointments, and that's about it. So there's a lot more thought that really should go into it. And I will talk you through these 10 different types of maternity care that are available to us here in Australia. So I guess not all of these types of care are available to everyone. It can be specific to where you live, but I'll go through them all for you anyway. So we have a private hospital birth with an obstetrician. So that's where you hire an OB to look after you. So all of your appointments would be with them. We do have, I guess, kind of smaller standalone private hospitals. So that's that first option there. Then we have a private hospital with an obstetrician, but some of our private hospitals are next door or included in the same building as some of our big public hospitals. So sometimes this can be quite attractive for people if they do want that OB, but they do want to be in a large tertiary hospital that has all those kind of facilities that those big hospitals have. You could have a public hospital birth with a midwife, so very, very common, and that is where you see any midwife for your appointment. When you go into labour, you'll just be assigned a midwife, generally that you haven't met before, and she'll look after you for the birth. Then your postnatal care will be delivered by another midwife that you haven't met before care is taken over by your maternal health nurse. Then we've got the gold standard of care. So this is a public hospital birth with a known midwife. And the reason this is the gold standard of care is because it's been studied, it's been looked at throughout the world, and it has the best outcomes for mums and babies. So what does it mean to have a known midwife? It means that you have one midwife, and she looks after you for your entire pregnancy. She comes into the hospital while you're in labour and looks after you while you're having your baby. and then she looks after you after your baby comes. So you can imagine that over approximately 6 months, you get to know this midwife extremely well. She gets to know you very well, and a huge level of trust builds and a strong bond. So because of that strong relationship, these women that are in these programs, so often called maternity group programs or midwifery group programs, MGP, caseload, team care, there's all sorts of different names, but it means that these women in these programs have less epidurals, less instrumental deliveries, so that is forceps or vacuum delivery, less episiotomies, so that's the cut to the perineum, less inductions, so that's when we start labour in hospital, less preterm babies, so that's babies born before 37 weeks, and this one just blows my mind. There's actually less risk of losing your baby, so less chance of having a stillborn baby when you have a known midwife. Unfortunately, many women can't access these programs. It's around 8% of women. So if it sounds like something that you want to do, please ask the hospital about it. See if you can go on a waiting list, or at least remember it for your next baby if you decide to have more kids. We also have another public hospital option, but it's really a private choice. So this is where you hire a midwife, so a private, sometimes called an independent midwife, and have all of your prenatal care with her. And then when you go into labour, look, she'll probably come to your house for a little while, and then you'll head into hospital together. When you have a privately hired midwife with admitting rights, it means that she has a relationship with that hospital and she can stay your midwife. So she can continue to give all of your medical care, which is fantastic. This is not that common here in Victoria. So there's only 2 midwifery clinics at the moment. So I'm recording this in March 2019. So there's 2 midwifery clinics that have a relationship with 2 hospitals, and that's Casey Hospital and the Northern. So if you do want this option and to hire a midwife privately, but are going to a different hospital, then she will simply become another support person and you'll have medical care from somebody else within the hospital. You can have a home birth, which you pay for privately. So that would be like hiring one of those independent midwives, but rather than heading off to hospital at the end of the birth, you just stay at home. We do have some home birth programs that are publicly funded through Medicare. So we have a public home birth program at Sunshine Hospital and one at Casey Hospital. So that means that you can have a home birth and Medicare covers it, but it's kind of through that medical system within that hospital. You can have a birth centre birth, not here in Victoria though, unfortunately. And a birth centre birth is where there's a centre somewhere, so sometimes within the hospital, but sometimes a freestanding centre. And it's almost like having a home birth within a medical centre. So generally very low interventions, not access to all pain relief options. And so no epidurals there. And generally you need to transfer to have a C-section if that needs to happen. Shared care with your GP. So this is where a lot of your care is done by your just general doctor, and some of your appointments are at the hospital. There is a public hospital option with a privately hired OB. So this probably isn't a really well-known option, but if there's a particular obstetrician you like, particular public hospital you like that has all those great facilities that often our big tertiary teaching hospitals have, then you could go with that option as well. So there's, I guess, a lot of choice out there. Sometimes the choice is very narrowed down depending on where you live, what your budget is, but there are generally more options than we're told about. I'll also include down the bottom of this presentation a link to my care provider comparison chart, which compares these 10 options and I guess all the pros and cons of them all, which there's always ups and downs with any option that you choose. You can also choose to add a doula into the mix with any of these, which I would highly recommend. Having a doula at your birth has also amazing outcomes. So I would really encourage you to think about the level of support that you want through your actual labour, because midwives, obstetricians, they're only in the room for part of the time. Generally, for a large portion of the labour, it will just be you and your support person. So do you want more guidance, more support for both of you during that time that you are by yourself? And do you want someone there helping you to advocate for what it is you want out of this birth? Okay, my second secret is all around your birth preparation. So learning absolutely as much as you can about the physical process of labour, learning about the huge hormonal process. So it's an incredible cocktail of hormones that is released from the body, something that absolutely cannot be replicated by using medicine, using chemicals. So really knowing about that and supporting that. Birth is emotional. It's the biggest, most challenging thing that we'll ever do. So learning information around that and how to support a mum through that process. So such important stuff for our partners to learn. Learning some pain relieving techniques, so some ways to get through labour without resorting to pain relief, I guess, too soon or at all. And I really encourage you, regardless of what your choices are around pain relief, to look at some ways to get through early labour on your own, because even if you think, yes, I'm going to have an epidural, you still need to get through many, many hours to get to the point where it's might be appropriate to have that epidural. Learning to navigate the system, which can be a pretty tricky thing to do. So just getting some confidence and some skills and some questions around working with the hospital. So for me, information is power. So learning as much as you can to be really informed and empowered. My third secret is around your mindset. So fear has a hugely damaging effect on labour. It will stop things, it will slow things, it will make things harder. So being able to go into labour free of fear, knowing that you've put this perfect team around you that you trust, you've built trust in yourself, in your body, and now you can surrender to labour. So surrender isn't the same as giving up. Surrender is knowing that you've got lots of techniques, lots of skills, you've got a great team around you, and now you can just work with labour. A really big thing that we look at is hitting walls, and will you both know what to do? Because labour's hard, and there can be points where a woman who wants a drug-free, natural birth, she might get to a point and say, I'm done now. I've had enough. Get me the epidural. I've changed my mind. And there are amazing things that you can do to work through that and achieve what it is that you set out to do, if that happens to be that drug-free birth. So lots of work around building up that confidence and skills of our partners. My fourth secret is around hypnosis. So I guess definitely considered the strangest part of the program, and a lot of people can't always understand how it works. So we're going to be clucking like chickens and dancing like Elvis. No, birth hypnosis is very different to stage hypnosis. So we use it, the first way we use it is to change perceptions of pain. So can we experience something that we initially felt as painful, and can we actually change that? Can we maybe feel it as tightness or pressure or heaviness or something else? The second way we use hypnosis is to clear our fears easily. So this is almost like wiping the slate clean in terms of our beliefs around birth. So do we believe that it has to be painful? Do we believe that a woman births on her back, screaming, red, sweaty? Or can we change those fears and beliefs into really positive ideas around birth? The state of hypnosis is really similar to where our brain waves need to be, where our mindset needs to be when we're actually in labour. So it's amazing that we get to experience that before labour, and our partners also get to experience that kind of space that a woman needs to be in while she's in labour. I believe that it's hypnosis that allows hypnobirthing births to be shorter and more comfortable. Fifth secret is around commitment. So it's not just about doing a 1-hour session and going, right, I'm ready for birth. You need to practice those pain relieving techniques, practice relaxation, practice breathing. You need to learn as much as you can around birth and parenting and pregnancy, the maternity system. You need to do your research. So do you know what the studies say around particular interventions, particular medications? Do you know what the studies say around inductions and links to other things? You need to watch birth videos, watch documentaries, watch TED Talks, read books, read blogs, read articles, read the research, read birth stories. So lots and lots of information to totally immerse yourself in. Some people will choose to do this themselves, and that's absolutely fine. Others will choose to do something like hypnobirthing, where it's all being put together for you in one place. It's easy, bite-sized chunks, and we can involve both the pregnant person and her partner. So some people will be thinking, oh, I don't know if this is for me. I'm not sure if I want to do this. So maybe if you're having some little hesitations pop up, I might be able to help you through some of those. So I guess the first thing is the time commitment that hypnobirthing takes. And it does take time. Just like anything worth something, it takes time to get that. So I would say maybe 30 to 50% of the couples that I teach do their hospital classes as well. A lot don't. So sometimes that can just kind of clear up some time straight away. But I often find that time isn't an issue for the people that are really, really keen on achieving that positive birth. The money that it's going to cost, and yes, this course does cost money and it's a reasonable amount of money. And I guess I just recommend that people have a think about other big events in their life. Birthdays, holidays, engagement party, maybe a wedding. And what did we do to prepare for all of those events? We researched, we took our time to plan, to think about really what we wanted out of that event. And I mean, think about weddings. We spend so much money, and we spend all that money because we want it to be the most perfect event. We want it to be the best day of our life. We don't want anything to go wrong. And so we plan it all, we make it perfect, and we spend a lot of money putting things in place so that it is wonderful. So birth is exactly the same. We do want it to be one of the best days of our lives. And birth, it's really similar, but how you feel during birth, that stays with you forever. That stays really deep within you for the rest of your life. So I just think beg, borrow, steal, do what you can to work out how you can pay for something like this. It's well worth it. It sounds weird. So some people just think, oh my gosh, hypnobirthing, it just sounds bizarre. And I can't do something like that because it just sounds too weird. It sounds too hippie. Just too strange. And I guess the word does us no favours. I would agree with that. But it is very mainstream. It's all based in science, and a lot of my couples, if they feel like friends or family might not react well if they say I'm doing hypnobirthing, just call it something else. Say I'm doing natural childbirth classes. I'm learning breathing, I'm learning relaxation, I'm learning some massage. Some people may think, I'll do this next time. I'm just going to see how I go, and if I don't have a good experience, okay, I'll do it for the next baby, which is fine. Everyone is on their own journey. I'm never one to put the hard word on someone and make them do something that they don't want to do. Personally, I just think we have so few babies. We have 1, 2, maybe 3, and why leave one of those births up to chance? Why chance all those horrible things that can happen during the labour? So physical stuff, mental stuff, and then that recovery. I know how difficult it can be. So I just think we should try and make every single experience as incredible as possible. And then a lot of people put their trust in the hospital and go, I'll be fine. As long as I just go with the flow and whatever happens, happens, it will be okay. And yes, the hospital wants to look after you, but they want to look after your immediate physical health of you and baby. So what does this mean? I guess in a nutshell, they want you to survive. They want you to survive labour so that you can come out the other side and go home, which is my number one priority, of course, absolutely. But I also look at your long-term physical health as well as babies, so making sure that birth hasn't been too hard on your body. And I also look at your long-term or your immediate and your long-term mental health. So I want to make sure that you go into parenting your baby, both you and your partner, as mentally prepared, as mentally strong as possible. So, yeah, birth is about making, not just birthing a baby, but birthing a really strong, capable, confident mother as well. Another little story here about Emily. So Emily had a VBAC. And if you don't know what that is, it's a vaginal birth after cesarean. And she had had a C-section for her first baby, which was breech, and was really hoping for a vaginal birth this time around. So I cried when I got this from her, and I just love how she said, you know, she'd never been proud of anything in her whole life, but this she was proud of, and she's going to remember it for the rest of her life. She birthed the way that she'd always dreamed of. So, yeah, really special story there. I also get feedback from the partners occasionally. So this I received from Kenny. It was really lovely, actually. I taught them and went home, opened my emails, and he'd already sent this. So I get that it's sometimes hard for the guys to come along to something called HypnoBirthing. That might sound a little bit strange, and they're not quite sure what they're in for. I often have a lot of kind of skeptical eyes looking at me in that first session, and by the end I feel like we've really connected, and they've really enjoyed that first session. So yeah, I think this from Kenny really kind of validated that for me, which was nice. About the course itself, we've got 5 modules of childbirth education, each 2.5 hours. So that's 12.5 hours all up. It is a really satisfying and positive method of birthing, and it's really a philosophy as much as it is techniques. So these techniques you can use to approach any birth, and we have mums that are induced, that do need C-sections, that may want to use pain relief, and then a lot of mums that are hoping for that drug-free physiological birth. So you can use hypnobirthing in any situation. Our philosophy is that birth is natural, normal, and healthy. You aren't diseased, you're not sick, you're not ill. This is a normal process. Birth has a natural rhythm and flow. So some labours are slow, some labours are super fast. Some go up and down, they're a bit of a combination of both. And ideally, we let that play out as long as mum and baby are safe and healthy. So when a healthy woman carrying a healthy baby, experiencing a healthy labour, trusts birth, is free of fear and appropriately relaxed, her body will function normally. Now, our hospital system doesn't really support this at the moment. They do tend to be very hands-on, and we need skills and knowledge to be able to work with our care provider in a really non-confrontational way, a really polite way to have this kind of birth play out for us. So what I teach is those 5 modules I mentioned. So module 1, the theory behind hypnobirthing. Lots of info there around the basics of labour, so what's happening in the body with the hormones. We look at how the mind works, how the body and the mind are quite connected. So yeah, lots of theory info there. Module 2 are techniques. So we're starting to get into those. Breathing techniques, relaxation techniques, massage techniques. Module 3, we do a lot of hypnosis. So really looking at the deep mind-body connection. We also do the fear release in that session, which is a really profound process where we clear out those fears, those stresses, those anxieties around pregnancy, birth, and parenting. Module 4 is labour start to finish. So really the nitty-gritty around what's going to happen when you're in labour. So what to do when you realise labour's started, labouring at home, in the car, at the hospital. We go over positions, we go over hands-on techniques like acupressure, hip squeezes, counter pressure, rebozo, lots of really great stuff in that session. Module 5, we pick this up where we birth the baby, so that kind of pushing stage. We look at bonding, lots of info around breastfeeding, some really amazing videos there to kind of get you started with that breastfeeding knowledge. And the 4th trimester. So going home with your baby, what's that going to be like? How can you manage visitors? How can you make life easier? And also talking about relationship changes and identity changes too. So it's a really, really comprehensive course. During the 5 sessions, we focus on 6 areas. So the first one is hypnosis. So we're going to look at what it is. And we're really kind of clearing up some of those myths around stage hypnosis versus birth hypnosis. So really all hypnosis is a nice relaxed state that someone has I guess kind of talked you through. So relaxing your forehead, relaxing your shoulders, getting nice and kind of loose and yeah, nice and relaxed. And when you're in that state, people accept suggestions more easily. So rather than just day to day, if I say, you can have a positive birth and you go, can I? Oh, okay. If you're nice and relaxed and I say, you can have a positive birth, you're more likely to take in those suggestions and start to believe that it's actually real and can happen. So we use hypnosis to clear those fears, to create natural painkillers, to change our perception of sensations, stay nice and energized during labour, and allow those birthing hormones to be released properly. So I think hypnosis is becoming more and more accepted. There's clinical hypnotherapists out there. We see a lot more of it. It's quite common, but some people are still a little bit nervous about it. So I guess worried that they might reveal deep, dark secrets. They might do embarrassing things, but really you're totally conscious. You're consenting, fully in control. You're aware of what's happening around you. You remember everything. You're just in a learning state. Our second area is our breathing techniques. So we have 3. The first one being the calm breath, which is a really beautiful breath. It's very relaxing. It helps you sleep. And this is the breath that we use in those nice, calm, resting periods in between contractions. Our surge breath is our second breath, and this is the one that we use during contractions. We call them surges, purely because often when we're thinking about something contracting, we're thinking about it shortening and tightening, and we want to think about everything relaxing and opening. So a surge of power, a surge of hormones, or a surge of energy. So our surge breath makes every single surge efficient. It keeps oxygen supplied to the baby. And when that happens, we're more likely to avoid fetal distress. It just means our muscles work really efficiently during those surges. Then we have the birth breath, which is the breath that we use when we're actually birthing our baby towards the end of labour. So this breath has all those same beautiful benefits as the surge breath, but it also keeps women in control when they're birthing baby, which means we help avoid tearing. It also means that because we're not using all of our energy to forcefully push our babies out, we stay nice and energized, we stay ready for breastfeeding and bonding. So it's a much nicer, more relaxed postpartum experience. We also use visualizations, which is the third area of hypnobirthing. Now, sometimes a little bit woo-woo for some people, and I guess what I love about hypnobirthing is that you don't have to use every single technique. There's some people that aren't any good at visualizing, or they just don't want to use them because they don't find them effective, and that's okay. So we have different types of visualization. So some that I'll just explain to you and you can just picture them in your mind. And then other ones that I give posters, so actual printouts to stick up around the room, maybe at home, take into hospital with you too. So I've got one that helps position the baby for birth and keep them there. So we want them head down. I've got another one that assists the opening and thinning phase so that it's shorter. So that's the first stage of labour, when the cervix is effacing and dilating to 10 centimetres. I've got another one that assists the uterine muscles to work in harmony. That just means it's nice and efficient, so there's going to be less tension and less pain. And our last one helps us to reach really deep states of relaxation quickly and easily. So that's that special birthing mindset that I mentioned. We can get there into that space really, really quickly. Education is a huge part of the program. So we're learning all sorts of stuff around how the uterus works, how fear affects labour. We talk about pre-birth bonding. So this is what your baby is learning in utero and how to connect with them really beautifully during this time. We talk a lot about care providers. So I've got an amazing guide of questions to get to know your care provider. We talk about preparing the body for birth, so exercise, nutrition. We talk about perineal massage, which can help reduce tearing. We go over birth preferences. So this is what we call birth plans. And because we do it in class, the partners have such a deep understanding of why we need birth preferences and what their role is around advocating for those preferences. We talk about breech babies. We talk about birthing hormones and how to get them released beautifully. We talk about due dates, about artificial induction as well as natural induction. We talk about what to do if labour slows and how you might restart it. We go over lots of positions for birth. We talk about bonding and breastfeeding. So yeah, lots of info. Affirmations may be another strange part of the program, but I think they are being used a lot more these days. Affirmations are just short little sentences. So something like, I am strong, I can do this, me and my baby are going to have an amazing birth. And when we use them repetitively, they change our behaviour, our habits, our actions and reactions. When we use them during the birth itself, we stay motivated, our mind stays focused, we just stay really positive and energised. So we have affirmations that are recorded, so an MP3 for the mothers as well as an MP3 for partners, so all around building that confidence of becoming a really supportive birth partner. Relaxation is the last part of our program. So we learn why this is so important in pregnancy. We want to keep our human growth hormones stable. We want to keep our cortisol levels, our adrenaline levels nice and low. This just means our immune system stays strong, because when you're pregnant, you want this just because you're very restricted in terms of things that you can take if you do happen to get sick. Relaxation in pregnancy means better blood flow around the system, and it can mean that baby sleeps and feeds better after birth. So we're looking at putting some research around this, because at the moment it's just anecdotal, but we're noticing it more and more. So we're trying to get some research and some numbers to show that a relaxed pregnancy can mean a relaxed baby. So the birth companion is a blanket term that we give that main support person to the pregnant woman. So they have a really important role in labour, and that first job is to understand and advocate for the birth preferences. So when mum's in labour, she goes into labour land, and what this is not using the neocortex, which is the thinking, conscious, logical part of our mind. We need women to access the limbic system, which is at the back, so our hindbrain. So we need to use that so our instincts kick in, so our hormones are released well. And that just means conversation needs to be limited for mum. So any negotiating needs to be done by a partner. Our partners need to know how to support the labouring woman physically and emotionally, as well as having lots of techniques to help with relaxation and pain relief. Our partners also learn why the perfect birth environment is important and how to create that. So lots and lots of great stuff for the partners. So I hope you want to join me on this birth revolution that I'm on. I really want to change how we look at birth and how we birth. I'll also share my biggest secret around birth, and that is it really all comes down to how you feel during pregnancy, during labour, how you were treated, were you respected, were you supported, were you listened to. When you are a part of the decision-making process around your body and your baby, then often it doesn't matter so much as to what occurred, if there does have to be interventions, if there does have to be surgery. When you feel supported and involved in those choices and you're the one that makes the decisions, then that means a positive birth. So stay in the driver's seat, stay in control, become curious, question everything, and if you don't have a care provider that is supporting you, then look for someone else. So what's included in the course? It is the 12.5 hours of class time. You get the HypnoBirthing book. You get a whole bunch of MP3s. So the Rainbow Relaxation MP3 is the cornerstone of the program. It's something that we try and listen to daily. You get a really beautiful booklet of HypnoBirthing scripts and all the class notes. So this is something that you take into hospital with you when you're in labour. Got lots of amazing references in there for the support people. You get those visualisation posters that I mentioned. You get those birth preferences templates. So we go through them in class, but then you get the Word documents to edit until your heart's content. You get access to a private Facebook community. You get support from me pre and post birth, and I can also be your doula if you want to discuss that. And I provide tea and coffee and snacks as well, so we won't let you go hungry during the sessions. Any questions? I would love to hear them. So you can email me, you can text me, I'll put all my details below. I will also link through to what's included, so you can always double check that. I will link through to how much the course costs, so I do have different course options, and you can read all about that. The best time to do this course is anywhere from 20 weeks, and as long as you've got maybe 3 or 4 weeks to practice, you can also start later. So you can do whatever is going to suit your type of learning experience best, your type of schedule, but I do recommend getting started earlier rather than later. So the classes, I will put a link to the dates and times as well. I teach on Monday nights and Thursday nights, 7 till 9:30, but with my private sessions we can be a bit more flexible with those. What else can I tell you? That might be about it. So I hope you've enjoyed the session. Anything I've forgotten, I'll put under this and you can have a bit of a read. But I hope to hear from you. I would love it if you booked in and really, learn all that you can about this really amazing method of birthing, and so that you can have the birth of your dreams. So all the best, and I'll hopefully be talking to you soon.